Okay, let's go back to Komodo, and I'm going to go look at my CSS. Now, something that you can also do with this background size is you can also give it specific pixel dimensions. So I'm going to copy this from the HTML section, and I'm going to paste it down here. But instead of cover, I'm going to change it so that it actually matches the dimension of this image, circles.png, and it always goes width and then height if you're using shorthand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say it was 150 pixels wide by, I don't need to write the word by, but by 500 pixels tall. Okay, so that's first of all what I can do, and then I can make sure that it's definitely going to be the right size. I can paste that here, here, and here. Now the other thing that I have to do is I also have to tell it that the height has to be a minimum height. So I can say minimum, you want to type min-height, and what that's going to do is I can say it has to always be at least 500 pixels tall. And what that's going to allow for is that no matter what, as long as that container, that body, is always at least 500 pixels tall, the background's going to show up, regardless of how much content is in it. So I'm going to save this. Let's go back to index. Okay, and let's dump all of these paragraphs. Let's just maybe keep one. And let's hit save. And we already saved our CSS. Now let's go back here and hit refresh. And you see now, in spite of the fact that we only have one paragraph with one line, it's still showing the full image, okay? Because it's saying that always we have to have a minimum height of 500 for the body. Now you'll also notice here to the left, it's got like this margin. Well, that's annoying. Well, what that is, let's go back. Oops, pardon me. Let's go back to Komodo Edit again, and let's look in the CSS. What you have to have for the body is you have to give it a 0 margin. So we'll say margin 0, and that'll be 0 all the way around, and that should collapse the margin, and if it doesn't, we'll deal with this a little separately. Let's go back, hit refresh, and then you see it does in fact collapse the margins on the sides. And so at this point what you would need to do if you didn't like the way that this picture looked is you'd have to go back to your photograph and you'd have to change it. And we can do that really quickly. Alright, so let's go to Photoshop, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to File, Open, Recent actually, and I'm going to open the circles PSD that we just had. Now I need to reselect these because I don't like the 1 pixel feather that I had added to it. So I'm going to turn the background layer on so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to take my marquee tool once again, and because I've got this grid so nicely set up, I can easily go back up to Window, or excuse me, View, and make sure that my grid is showing, which it is, and then I need to make sure that Snap to Grid is enabled. Alright, and I can double check it, and it says snap to grid, so we're good. So once again I'm going to click in the center of this circle, and I'm going to hold down Option Shift and drag it out, and I know it's going to snap for me. I can do that, and then I can go ahead and fill that with my white by using my paint bucket. And oh, before I do that, hold on just a moment. I think I forgot something. I'm going to deselect, and I'm going to hold down Command or Control D as in dog, or as in deselect. I'm going to deselect that. Something I forgot to check. When I click on my elliptical marquee again, I need to make sure that this feather is set to 0, because last time we used it, it was set to 1 pixel. It's really important to know that your options are going to remember the last setting that was used on that tool, and so you need to make sure that you take a feather off or you put a feather on whenever you need to. Okay, so now let's go back and remake that selection. So I'll click in the center, hold down Option Shift, and drag my circle outwards, let it snap to the grid. Now I can go ahead and fill it with my paint bucket, and what it should have done if I deselect now is it made a much crisper edge. So I'm going to be okay with that. And let's go back and let's draw these other ones as well. And I'm going to fill that one, deselect it, and this is looking a lot nicer. And then I'll go back to my last one. And remember, it's not completely filling them in because I still have that mask applied. So you don't really have to worry about that as long as you still have that mask. And I clicked inside of here, and I'm going to deselect, and now you see these are nice crisp lines. So this is why I was making a point earlier that's so important to save your original Photoshop documents. Otherwise you would have to do this whole thing over again. So I'm going to save this document, and now I'm going to go ahead and save a copy for the web. And what's really nice, and look what I did. See, I forgot to turn off the black background layer, so I'm going to hit cancel, turn off my background layer, and now let's do save for web again. I want to make sure that this one is transparent PNG 24, and we're going to go ahead and click on save. And I'm just going to overwrite in my images folder. I'm going to overwrite the circles PNG file that's already there, because I know I don't like the old one. We'll just hit replace, and now all you've actually got to do is go back to the web browser and hit refresh, and you can automatically see that it's much crisper. Now if you don't like the opacity of that, if maybe that's too heavy, let's look at the other example. And the other example is much lighter, and I actually think that I personally prefer it much lighter because it's going to start getting really busy if you try to put text and everything in here. So we can jump back to Photoshop yet once again. And in our layer over here, while we have the circles selected, we can drop the opacity down to, let's try maybe 20% and see if somewhere in there, okay? And let's go ahead and do a save for web. And here's the shortcut command if you want to use that. It's a bunch of keys, and we'll save it. We're going to overwrite circles PNG again and refresh. And you see that's much lighter, and that's looking like a lot closer. It's even still a little bit too bright if you wanted to really make it like the original. So if you did, let's try it one more time. Let's maybe take it to 10%, and so we'll just type that value in at 10, and we're gonna save for web. I'm using the shortcut keyboard command. It looks like you can barely see it, but you know that we'll be able to see it on the actual blue screen. Say overwrite the other one again, and finally let's refresh it, and it's much lighter. In fact, it was probably somewhere around 12 to 15%, but whatever. You get the idea. So now you've got your very light circles. Okay, so that's how you would remake that picture. That's how you get these two overlapping background images in, and then from here in the next video I'm going to show you how you can start to think about creating a title up here.